Hello and welcome to Season 3, Episode 19 of Logicast, the AWS News podcast brought to you by Logicata. I'm Carl Robinson, CEO and co-founder of Logicata, and I'm joined, as always, by fellow community builder and lead cloud engineer, John Goodall. How are you doing today, John?
Fellow renewed community builder.
I know, that's why I said it. I normally never say the community builder part, but because we've been renewed, I'll allow you that reaction.
Only because you did it on your news roundup on Friday.
I did, didn't I? Yeah.
I'm going to do this one as well.
You can have that one. But yeah, as you can tell, we're really pleased to have been renewed for our second year into the AWS Community Builder program. So thank you, Jason and the team. We're very excited to be back. We're also joined today by another fellow AWS Community Builder, Raphael Manke. How are you doing, Raphael?
Hi, I'm doing good.
Good. So, tell us a bit about yourself. Where are you based? What do you do for the community?
So I'm Raphael. I'm an IT consultant working in Germany for a company called CodeCentric. And what we do is basically help our customers in their cloud journey, developing customized applications. And in my role, I'm an IT consultant cloud. So I'm working day-to-day basis together with the customers, implementing solutions mainly based on AWS. And I'm doing a lot of serverless stuff. I'm also a community builder in the area of serverless since this year. And so serverless at heart, basically doing a lot of serverless stuff, architectures, troubleshooting, maintenance, all this stuff. And if I'm not working, I'm also running an AWS user group in my hometown. So I'm living in Karlsruhe. It's a city southern Germany, 1 hour to Frankfurt, south of Frankfurt. And we have regular meetups once a month, various topics, AI, maintenance, database workshops, all that stuff. So yeah, quite active.
That's awesome. How do you find going monthly on the user group? Have you got much in the way of help with that, or is it all you?
It is mainly my responsibility or my time I spent into doing that. I have a great employer who gives me at least location and budget to host these sessions. So they are always in our offices. We have an office with spaces for doing events like these. So it is not that much of an effort. But yeah, it's still challenging to find speakers every month. And sometimes to make a gap because of vacations or reinvent and stuff like that. So I think at the end of the year, we will have like 8 to 10 meetups.
Nice. Well, we just had the pain of losing a speaker for the first time in our previous to illness, unfortunately. So we had a speaker, and isn't that the first time? Okay.
No, because Ben dropped out on us the first time, but we had Matt booked in because he was stuck in Japan. Worst places to be.
I wasn't going to name and shame anybody. I was just going to talk about it.
I didn't give his surname, and I don't think he.
He'll know who he is.
I might tag him.
Yeah, it was quite painful. We had a holiday last week in the UK, and our user group was the day after the holiday. And during the holiday, the speaker told me that he was ill and unfortunately able to join. And we also had an act lined up to go on after the speaker, and we found out on the day that the act had injured themselves and was no longer able to join either. So our entire agenda just completely disappeared. So John and I had to pull something mostly John, to be fair, had to pull something together last minute. But we pulled it off, and I think the guys enjoyed it. But I got a question for you, Raphael. Have you guys got stickers? Because obviously you're running the AWS user group Karlsruhe, and my name is Carl, so I'd quite like to have a sticker with my name on it.
Not yet. So we don't have stickers yet. Also, our logo is quite new. So it was designed like a few weeks back. Before that, we had an old logo, and I had great help from Linda. She's running the user group in Vienna, and she's all good in designing stuff. And so we sit together, and she designed a logo for my user group. So probably something I should print for the next meetups or for next year to hand out to people at my user group. So you have to join the user group to get the sticker then.
Okay, well, Carl's going to have to come to Karlsruhe. Yeah, Carl's going to have to come to Karlsruhe to get a Karlsruhe user group sticker for Carl's laptop. So
is there a conference in Frankfurt we can do at the same time?
Maybe we'll have to look into that. Yeah,
we can meet somewhere else in Germany. So there is also a community in September in Munich. So maybe if you join that, we can make that happen.
Nice. Well, remember, keep a sticker to one side for me. Anyway, we're not here to talk about user groups and stickers. Regular listeners to the podcast will know that once a week I curate a list of AWS news, which I share via my weekly AWS News Roundup newsletter. And then John and I pick a subset of articles from the newsletter that we'd like to talk about with our guests. So we have got such a selection of articles to talk to you about this week. And the first one is a new feature that's been added to AWS Resilience Hub. It's a short feature announcement from the AWS website, and the title is AWS Resilience Hub expands application resilience drift detection capabilities. So, Raphael, you were keen on this article, so I'm going to come to you first. Tell us a little bit about Resilience Hub and whether it's relevant in your world and what this new feature might mean to users.
So Resilience Hub is a service from AWS that keeps track of your deployed application. So whether it's in CloudFormation stack or any other kind of groups of resources, they keep track of them and help you to build resilient applications. What that means, so maybe you have some policies in place that mean, okay, I have to recover within 1 hour when a database instance drops. And what Resiliency Hubs then is track your architecture and see if your architecture fits to these policies. And then if they are not fitting to your policies, they might give you recommendations like for database instance, maybe you need to have a cold or a warm instance next to the actual serving instance or at some other scaling operations to your architecture to fulfill your requirements. And for now, so once you have indexed your application, it does some regular intervals check if the application fulfills your requirements or your policies for resiliency. And now with this new announcement, they also track changes in your architecture. So if your architecture has changed by adding more instances or other resource types to your architecture, they are now evaluated as well within their drift detection and notifies you, hey, your architecture has changed. And with this change, now your resiliency has dropped, for example, and you can react on that. So that's a quite useful thing if you have an architecture that uses a lot of EC2 instances, RDS databases. So it's not a thing I use regular in my architectures because I'm highly using serverless services and adding a new Lambda function. I make sure, I pray to AWS, they will serve it when I need it. So their resiliency is on AWS side, but if you have workloads with containers, beanstalks, EC2 instances, or databases, I think that is a really helpful tool to increase your resiliency. Also, the fault injection simulator is part of this simulator. So if you want to do an experiment and see what happens with your application, if there is a database dropped or there are some additional latencies, you can easily test them with the fault injector. So I think Resiliency Hub is a cool tool to investigate, and new features to that are really helpful to implement it in your day-to-day basis.
Before I come to you, John, I just got a comment that it's really great, the commitment from AWS community builders. We've got Raphael who's praying to AWS, and I saw on LinkedIn this morning, Lee Priest, a fellow AWS community builder, has had an AWS tattoo. So we're us community builders, we're really there for the cause. So.
Both Raphael and Lee are serverless community builders, so I wonder if it's a specific subset.
Could be, yeah, could well be. What do you do, John? Raphael's praying, Lee's having a tattoo. What's your commitment to the serverless world?
Oh,
superhero quick changes.
Superhero quick changes. Yeah, all right then.
Anyway, thoughts on Resilience Hub, John?
No notes. It's not something I've ever used. I don't really have experience with it. Drift detection is something that I'm more used to within your infra code, and that's kind of at deploy time. So it's useful. It's good to know that, someone has deleted something and I'm going to forcefully recreate it, or someone has added something and I don't know about it. Let's deal with that. But obviously that's at a very specific point in time. So this is good if it's giving you kind of more timely notifications, and if someone has gone from a multi-AZ to a single AZ database, for instance, you just get oh no, let's fix that. So that's useful. I can see that being useful. I can't see us implementing it specifically for customers because that's way over the level of what we tend to look at, certainly at the current product offering. But it's a nice thing to have.
intended for large scale.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to keep control of like one scaling group of 2 instances and one database. That's reasonably easy. You can go, hang on a minute, the whole service is dead. Someone's deleted the database. That's, you're going to know about that a lot faster than Resilience Hub is going to tell you about it. If you've got hundreds of thousands of databases, for instance, then you might not necessarily know about it. Or if it's an ETL process that is only called once every couple of weeks, then you might not know about it until that point in time. So it's a scale tool, I think.
Also, you need to have some workloads that define some recovery time frame. So if it's not relevant for or critical for your business, how fast you can recover from an actual disaster, maybe this service is not the right fit for you and you can skip it. But if you have a high demand of recovering fast, and then you should probably use tools or take more efforts in doing a resiliency architecture than if it's just an application which has downtime capabilities for multiple hours or days, then you probably don't need this.
Cool. Fair enough. On that note, then let's skip on to our second article for this week, which is all about AWS Budgets and some new features in AWS Budgets, which now supports resource and tag-based access controls. So, John, a bit more in your world, this one?
Yeah, a bit more normal for me. I don't have a reaction. I've got the various reactions for, the stars and the thumbs up, but I don't have one for money. I need a money reaction. I don't have one. So, yeah. Resource and tag-based access control is a bit of a minefield, in my opinion. So it was brought out for a couple of other things a little while ago now, where the traditional access methods have been resource-based, anything like S3 bucket policies and the like, or user-based, as in IAM. Yeah. And user doesn't necessarily mean user. It could be a role, it could be an instance profile, but from the IAM side, as in you have nothing by default and we grant you some things. And on the resource side of things, you also have nothing by default and then we grant you some things. Cool. And then you can kind of, they join up with each other and you get this nice kind of way of doing things. Tag-based access controls give me the heebie-jeebies a little bit, because you then magically have permissions if someone's put a tag on something. Okay, I can see that. I can see the workload. I can see the use case. I can see it being useful. It makes me uncomfy. It does. It makes me uncomfy, because in this instance, it's reasonably harmless. But what you're doing is you can configure an IAM policy that references a budget using either the ARN of said budget, or anything that has this tag. That makes me nervous, because someone that doesn't have permission to see a budget but does have permission to set tags and shouldn't have permission to see that budget can then set the tag and see the budget. And then unblocking that becomes a complete mare of a thing to do, because you then have to worry about setting access policies and actions that prevent people from doing those things. So it's kind of like, where's the benefit? If I wanted the user to be able to have access to this budget, what I'd do is I'd set a policy that is attached to a group, and then the role that the user is assuming goes in the group. Poof. Done. Or I'd attach it to the role directly, and lots of users are assuming the role. Bosh. Easy peasy. Rather than this, which feels a bit, I don't know, it just makes me uncomfy.
What are your thoughts on, Raphael? You're nodding there. Are you in agreement, or?
I'm in agreement with the tags-based access. It's always tricky to find use cases where it's safe to use access control based on tags, because you always have to make sure that people cannot assign these tags on their own. And that's a quite common thing. But resource-based access could be very interesting if you want to give access to a lot of different accounts, for example, and then you can define a resource policy, for example, and say everyone from my organization gets access through their AWS account to this budget service. So in these cases, a resource-based policy is way easier than allowing each individual to access a resource, in this case, the budget.
Nice.
Yeah. It's you can get started with these programmatically at no additional cost. Cool. I won't bother.
Solving a problem a solution looking for a problem. This one, is it?
I don't know, maybe it depends, because if you've got a very locked down permission set for finance users and you've already got that, then you can, in theory, carve up the various budgets on like a team basis. So you know, as this admin type, and maybe this is where I'm coming from because I've always had admin or near admin access. So it's like, well, this isn't relevant for me, but you've got, say, a central billing account and you've got a finance team per se, and their finance role is heavily restricted so that all they can actually do is look at these budgets. Yeah, they can interact with them. Maybe they can do some cost control reports, maybe. And then you need to carve that up by another layer so that you can only look at, if you're the finance person responsible for X, Y, and Z business units and not A, B, and C business units, you only need to be able to see budgets for X, Y, and Z business units and not A, B, and C business units. So again, this feels very enterprising, and maybe that's where my head is kind of sitting, because I'm not there. The only issue again that I have with this is it only appears to be for budgets, and most finance people that I've ever come across want to also be able to see the data that feeds the budget, not just like, here's the number, here's the alerts.
Fair enough. So jury's out on whether this is a real benefit. Certainly not in our use case anyway, but let's move on to the next article. And we've managed to get halfway through the episode without talking about AI, but I'm afraid that's come to an end. We're now going to talk about AI, as we tend to most weeks now. But this is an article from the AWS News blog about a new service which has gone into preview, Amazon Bedrock Studio. So the full title is Build Generative AI Applications with Amazon Bedrock Studio. So obviously Bedrock has been GA for some time, and its global rollout, which we've spoken about on the podcast before, is underway, coming to London soon. I think it's already in Germany. Raphael, have you got Bedrock in Frankfurt? Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, you get Bedrock, the app, and then the models slowly follow behind. But anyway, this is a slightly different service which has gone into preview, which is Bedrock Studio. So, John, tell us a little bit about Bedrock Studio.
I mean, my original thought was, how is this better or more useful than Party Rock? Because that was kind of, you know, that was the thing behind Party Rock, is you can quickly and cheaply, or for free, build these AI apps and you just kind of play with it. And we saw some really creative things in Party Rock. We saw one of our previous speakers, Matt Carey, did and I'm going to go on about this because I quite like it, had a tool like a plant doctor, and it told me my peace lilies need more nitrogen. Well, lo and behold, they've got a bit more sun and a bit more nitrogen, and they're flowering great guns now. So apparently it was right. Brilliant. But that was my initial thought, is how is this different from that? Going through the article, haven't had time to play with Bedrock Studio, but going through the article, it makes it feel more aligned with the SageMaker Studio kind of area. And it's kind of useful. It's kind of useful because you can start to create these LLM functions off of these foundational models without having to really get right into the weeds of your technical implementation. So you can start to develop, you know, you can create your guardrails and your content filters and so on and so on and so on without having to get right into the weeds of it. I mean, case in point was when I was playing with trying to get the AI summarization for this podcast to work, and I will blog about that eventually because I want my year 3 renewal.
And you can't get AI to do it because you're not allowed any AI generated content in the community builder program. So
I can talk about me using AI to generate content, but I can't get AI to write the content. Fine, okay.
But how will they know?
I think it's on the honor
Will
system.
They know?
AI
I'd be so paranoid that they have tools for knowing. So
I know. LLMs are really good at detecting LLM created content, it turns out. Go figure. But the point is, when I was playing with that and trying to get that to work, the only way I really had of fiddling with it was through a Lambda. And, you know, there's a step function kind of built around it and all the rest of it. But there was no easy way of just interacting with the endpoint and seeing what it was going to do. If you look at some of the previous AI API offerings from AWS, Recognition being the one that I like to use, again, that's just an API. But if you go to Recognition in the console, there's this little upload an image here and what do you want to do with it, and it'll kind of tell you what's going on. And there's some kind of pre-rolled examples on there, like a woman in a bikini or some people in PPE and kind of all the rest of it. And you can sort of put the options against it, and it gives you a reasonable, here's what the input needs to look like, here's what the output needs to look like, here's the documentation. And Bedrock kind of had that, but not really. And this is just much more comprehensive. It's a much easier way of interacting with it, I think. The only concern I have, and I haven't seen it in the article, it's in preview, which is fine, but things like SageMaker Studio cost you a shed load of money because they start running on servers. What's this going to cost?
Yeah, I mean, before I come to you on this, Raphael, I saw it as kind of between Party Rock, because obviously Party Rock's a very limited set of functionality. So this, to me, slots in between Party Rock and full-blown Bedrock. It gives you a bit more of a feature-rich playground than Party Rock, which is all just kind of text-based, really. But yeah, what are your thoughts, Raphael?
Yeah, so I see it similar than John. For me, it is new Amazon Q preview playground studio is some kind of next evolution of the Party Rock. Party Rock was some kind of MVP, POC, it was proof of concept to get AI tools accessible to the wider audience. And now with this Amazon Q studio, they have a way of making money. There's also a trend of building low-code tools. So we don't need developers to build some proof of concept applications and play around and try to solve business cases without coding anything, just plug and play, do have visual interfaces and all that stuff. And I think that's the area where Amazon Q Studio will play around. And yeah, pricing will be a big factor. What happens if the business owner now builds a nice application, but it costs more than the value it actually generates? And in the end, the IT department has to pay for it and will be blamed. So it was also interesting because I think it's integrated in the Amazon console. So if you want to bring on non-tax to this application, they need to get AWS access as well to actually play around with the AI tools from their business cases. And let's see what they bring when they go GA.
Yeah, I mean, I assume it's going to cost the same as Bedrock. It's just simplifying your interface into Bedrock. So, you know, the cost will be whatever models you're calling, and
you say that,
how long you're
but
running
SageMaker Studio has a cost ahead of what SageMaker workloads actually cost, because there's the whole ML training piece. But the studio, you pay for the servers that it's running on, which is okay, fine. But it's not immediately apparent that it's actually provisioning servers and running them under the covers, and then you have to destroy your workspace. Otherwise, you end up with these enormous bills. So,
Yeah, and if it's in preview, maybe all of that isn't decided yet. You know, I don't know whether the commercials are finalized. I'm sure we've seen in the past that pricing models for things have changed when they've gone from preview into GA. You know, I guess that's a part of the preview process, is to get the feedback on the pricing models. You know, does it work commercially for the customer? Because if it doesn't, then it's going to remain in preview, I guess, until it does. Yeah, it's certainly interesting. You know, anything that helps people to get stuck in, because you know, as we all know, AI is a bit of a bubble at the moment. Everybody's talking about it. Most people are not quite sure what to do with it. So you know, anything that gets people experimenting and working with it has got to be positive in my view. So on that note, let's skip along to the next article, which is also about AI, but this is a slightly different angle. This is an article on CIO Dive based on a talk that Andy, I guess it was the results announcements that this came out of, but the title is Amazon Tempts Enterprises to Customize AI on AWS. CEO Andy Jassy called the hyperscalers move to open its Bedrock platform to tailored models a sneaky big launch. So this, of course, is one of the key benefits of Bedrock, is the fact that you can tailor models. And I don't know a lot about that, but John, I'm sure you know more about it than me. So why would you want to tailor a model, and how would you go about that? You know, why is Bedrock the right place to do it, I guess?
So it's not one of the key advantages of Bedrock over kind of anybody else. The Bedrock's key advantage, I think, is just the democratization of model access, because it's just all in one place. Yeah. If you want to go and, apart from like the GPT models, and that's kind of, but there's other text models you can play with, because there's loads of other models you can use. Cool. That's the key benefit. In terms of tailoring, this is going up the chain of making your LLM responses more accurate. I learned this at the Partner Summit, so it's worth going for one vaguely technical talk. And then we
And a
spoke about
swag
marketing.
bag.
And a swag bag, which is up there. And I don't have the cup on my desk, but there we go. As you go up the chain, up the stack, things get more complicated, more expensive, but your results get better. So at the bottom of the chain, you've got the foundation model, and then you use prompt engineering, which is asking the right questions, knowing how to Google, but for AI. Okay. Then you can start looking at RAG, retrieval augmented generation, which is just a bunch of extra data that you're feeding into the model. And then you start to do model tailoring, which is where you've trained on top of the foundation model more information into the model. So that, again, combining the things beneath it, you're still kind of going to do prompt engineering regardless of your model. You're not going to ask it a naff question. You're going to ask it a reasonably crafted question. But the more specific your model gets and the more data it's got, the better results you're going to get out of it. So being able to do your tailoring somewhere else and import it is great, because it means you don't have to pay GPU pricing within AWS. Brilliant. Because you might have, for want of a better sentence, you might have a big gaming PC that's got a big GPU sat in it, and it might just be, that's your personal PC, but you're okay with using that to churn through some model training for a bit. And that saves you a bunch of money on your Amazon bill, because it's going to be cheaper to do it yourself if you've already got the kit. This is kind of the cloud versus on-prem argument all over again. Is, the cloud is usually cheaper because you haven't had to buy the kit and you're only paying for it when you need it. But if you've got the kit anyway, because you're a gamer or you work in a graphic design house and they have these big bits of kit already, great. Or if you're doing it 24/7, then it's going to be cheaper to have your own gear because you're just doing it 24/7. So you can do that and import it into Bedrock and then use Bedrock. Brilliant. Like that a lot.
Matthias did a video recently about local customizing of LLMs, pros and cons. So interesting one to look at. What are your thoughts on this one, Raphael?
So I think it's an interesting thing because it is also some kind of serverless, isn't it? So once I imported my model, I don't have to run an inference instance all the time. It is once uploaded, and then I can try to evaluate my use cases whenever I need it, and I only pay for my request or tokenization instead of having an GP2 instance running multiple hours or all the time I need it. And it also scales probably within the Bedrock capabilities. So that's actually the user side, from the user side perspective, a good thing. On the other hand, I need to make sure the article does not go into detail how do they separate the data from the actual shared ones. So because I don't think they will store a complete copy of the actual LLM it was trained on. So they will have some separation between the customized part and the actual LLM model. So there's a lot of technical details that are hidden in this announcement, and they need to catch up with that and explain to customers how is it safe to store your enterprise knowledge into the cloud within a model that is not shared with other customers. And yeah, that's a thing they need to catch up now. And in the end, we will see if it's beneficial or not.
Yeah, I think AWS are going to great lengths to stress to people that your data, if you're doing RAG or if you're importing custom models, is not going to be used to train the base model. But I think you're right. There's not a lot of technical detail around that at the moment. It's just kind of fluff, as we mentioned before. It's sales spiel right now that we're not going to do this. And I think the more deeply technical people in the community are going to want to know, okay, if you're not going to do it, how are you going to how are you segregating things to make sure that can't happen? We need some reassurance on that. It'd be interesting to see, Raphael, as you say, how that kind of how that pans out as all of this rolls forward, because a lot of it's being built. The aeroplane is being built in flight, as they say. So a lot of this is developing before our eyes.
Very British reference instead of the plane, but I always think of the Wallace and Gromit film. Is it The Wrong Trousers, where Gromit is just putting the track down as the train's going?
Yeah.
That's exactly what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an even more British reference. Yeah. So on that note, let's skip on to an article which is not British at all. It's our final article for this week, and it is all about AWS doubling down on their investments in Singapore. So lots of investment announcements recently, I guess off the back of the recent successful quarterly results that were published. So I think we had one last week. I forget where AWS was investing last week, but I've seen loads of articles recently about AWS investing in new different geographic regions. And this week, Singapore is the subject of this article. So thoughts on this one, Raphael?
Oh, I actually have no big thoughts on that. I don't know what Singapore makes it unique to spend that much money in this region. Maybe you, John?
Singapore is one of the wealthiest city-states that isn't the Vatican, because it's a whole country that's a city. It's basically just one city. That's why it's expensive to build there, and everything's expensive there just because of the nature of things. Singapore specifically is not interesting for this. I think there's already a Singapore region. Is there already a Singapore region?
There's already a region. I think that, it's a commitment to adding new data centers into that region. But before you say what you're going to say, John, I think Singapore's always been a pretty important internet hub in that part of the world. So for many, many years, a lot of the big data center providers have been investing heavily in Singapore, partly because of its geographic location. Therefore, its proximity for latency purposes to that part of the world. And partly, I think, because the government has heavily incentivized investments in data centers. Certainly, I know that was the case in Malaysia, just across the border, that the government has made it very attractive for businesses to build data centers in those regions. So I'm sure those incentives still continue. It's great to see Amazon pumping more money into that area. So like you say, it's nothing new. It's always been a pretty major hub for the internet in that part of the world. But anyway, you were going to say something, John, before I rudely interjected.
You can interject all you want. Oh, that sounds so wrong. No, there's not really anything else. The only thing I was going to say is, as you say, it's historically been a recipient of a lot of internet money, and it would be nice to start to see that spreading to other parts of Southeast Asia. But I guess there's geopolitical concerns there that I'm very unqualified to talk about.
Yeah, and potentially infrastructural concerns, because once a hub becomes a hub, all the infrastructure goes there, and it makes it harder for anywhere else to become a hub because they simply don't have the infrastructure. Because it's not just about the cloud and data centers; it's about the networks that connect to those, and connect it to the rest of the world. So, it's as I say, once an area becomes a hub and gets that status, gets all of that infrastructure put in there, it becomes hard for other locations to compete because they simply don't have the infrastructure there to provide the same levels of service.
Such is life. We live in
the
west of Europe, so we're rather spoilt.
We are very spoilt for choice. Yeah, we're very spoilt for choice when it comes to data centers, but long may that continue. Anyway, on that note, we have reached the end of our time for this week for season 3, episode 19 of Logicast. So if you've made it this far, thank you for listening. If you enjoyed it, tell your friends. We are available to download wherever you download your podcasts. And if you'd like to see my facial reaction to John's comment, check us out on YouTube. Thank you, John, as always, for your insights. And thank you very much to our special guest, Raphael, for joining us. It's been great to hear your insights as well and your contributions to the community. And look forward to seeing your AWS Community Builder renewal announcement next year when you come up for renewal for your second year. So that was all for Season 3, Episode 19 of Logicast. Thanks for listening. We'll see you again next time.